The evacuation of New Terra began 3 days after Jake Morrison left the council chambers. Captain Danny Foster stood on the landing platform and watched the massive cargo ships load everything the colonists could carry. 20 years of building, 20 years of turning a dead rock into a garden world, and now they were taking it all apart piece by piece. "Sir, the hospital equipment is loaded," reported Lieutenant Paul Jackson. He was young, maybe 25, and this was the first time he had seen an entire world being abandoned. "Dr. Amy Collins says the medical research will be preserved." Danny nodded but did not take his eyes off the horizon. In the distance, the towers of New Terra City caught the light of the setting sun. Human engineers had built those towers to last 1,000 years. Now they would stand empty, monuments to a friendship that had died in fear and suspicion. The colonists moved like ghosts through their former homes. They took what they could carry and left the rest. Gardens that had taken decades to grow, parks where children had played, schools where human and alien students had learned together. All of it would be empty by the end of the week. Maria Santos worked in the orbital shipyards above the planet. She had been chief engineer here for 8 years, building ships for a dozen different alien species. The Corthani cruisers with their crystal hulls, the fast attack ships that the Draconians loved, the massive cargo haulers that kept trade moving between the stars. "Begin the demolition sequence," she told her team. They had worked together for years, building things that would last centuries. Now they were tearing it all down in a matter of days. The controlled explosions lit up space like fireworks. Each blast took away years of work, years of dreams. "It feels wrong," said Chief Technician Bobby Wright. He had helped design the main construction bays. All this knowledge, all this experience, just gone. Maria watched another section of the yard disappear in a ball of fire. "We are not destroying it," she said. "We are taking it with us. Every blueprint, every technique, every improvement we made. The aliens will have to start over from nothing." On the other side of the galaxy, Admiral Kevin Blake sat in his command center on Luna. The holographic display in front of him showed the entire galaxy. Red dots marked human settlements, research stations, military bases, and trade posts. Every few minutes, another dot would blink out as another human outpost shut down and packed up. "The hegemony is already moving ships toward our former patrol routes," said Colonel Janet Price. She was Blake's intelligence officer, and she had been tracking alien fleet movements since the evacuation began. "They think they can just take over where we left off." Blake almost smiled. "Let them try. They have no idea what those patrol routes actually protect against. The pirates and raiders are the least of their problems. The humans had been in space for over 200 years. In that time, they had found things in the dark between stars that would give the council members nightmares. Ancient weapons that still worked after millions of years. Derelict ships full of dangers that could destroy worlds. And worse things. Things that moved in the deep dark and hunted anything that made too much noise. The humans had built early warning systems and patrol networks to watch for these dangers. They had fought small wars against threats that the other species never even knew existed. Now all of that protection was going away. The galaxy would have to learn to defend itself. Commander Rex Holt of the Vorten Defense Fleet sent message after message to human space. The communications came back with automatic replies that said the same thing every time. "This frequency is no longer monitored. Humanity wishes you well in your future endeavors." Rex had served alongside human officers for 15 years. He had learned their tactics, used their technology, trusted their intelligence reports. Now his ship patrols felt blind and naked without the human sensor networks feeding him information. "Sir, we have 3 unidentified contacts in the Altair sector," his communications officer reported. "They are not responding to our signals." In the old days, Rex would have called Captain Tony Martinez. Tony commanded the human patrol squadron in that area, and his ships could identify any vessel in space just by looking at its engine signature. But Tony was gone now, along with his ships and his expertise. "Send 2 ships to investigate," Rex ordered. He hoped they were just merchants who had forgotten to update their identification codes. But deep in his heart he knew that hope was probably wrong. Dr. Nina Gray had been replaced at Kythera Station by a team of draconian scientists. They were smart, but they did not understand the complex systems that kept the research facility running. Nina had spent 5 years learning how everything worked together. The new team had 2 weeks to figure it out before the life support system started failing. The aliens tried their best, but human technology was different from what they were used to. The power systems needed constant adjustment. The computer networks required regular maintenance that the instruction manuals did not explain properly. Within days, critical systems were showing warning signs. On the merchant ship Star of Aldebaran, Captain Quimal tried to stay calm as his ship's distress beacon sent messages into empty space. Pirates had attacked his convoy in the Centauri sector, the same area where human patrol ships used to hunt raiders every day. But there were no human ships anymore, and the alien defense forces were spread too thin to respond quickly. Still, no answer, his communications officer reported. The human emergency frequency is not responding. Quimal had traded with humans for 20 years. He knew their voices, their faces, their habits. They had always been there when trouble came. Now the space around his damaged ship was silent, except for the static of distant stars. Back on Luna, Admiral Blake received reports from all over the galaxy. Trade routes under attack, research stations failing, defense networks breaking down. The careful balance that had kept peace for decades was falling apart like a house of cards. "Should we respond to any of these distress calls?" asked Colonel Price. She had friends among the alien fleets, people she had worked with and fought beside. Blake shook his head. "Our orders are clear. We monitor, but we do not interfere. The galaxy made its choice. Now it has to live with what it chose." Lieutenant Commander Beth Turner brought him the daily intelligence summary. Every page showed the same pattern. Systems that had worked perfectly with human support were breaking down without it. Conflicts that had been contained with human mediation were spreading out of control. "How long before they realized their mistake?" Turner asked. Blake looked at the holographic display where more red dots were disappearing every hour. Soon there would be none left in alien space. "Not long. But by then it will be too late. We will be gone, and they will have to face whatever comes next all by themselves." The great evacuation continued day and night. Millions of humans loading their lives onto ships and heading for the unknown regions beyond the galactic rim. Behind them, they left a galaxy that was slowly learning what it meant to be alone in the dark. Jake Morrison walked through the long halls of the Galactic Council building on Zephyria Prime. His boots made soft sounds on the smooth metal floors. The walls around him showed pictures of all the different alien species that made up the Council. 47 different worlds, 47 different kinds of life, all working together to keep peace in the galaxy. At least that was how it was supposed to work. Today felt different. Jake had been the human ambassador for 12 years, and he could feel when something bad was coming. The other ambassadors had been whispering in corners for weeks. They would stop talking when he walked by. Their alien faces would turn away from him like he carried some kind of disease. The main council chamber was huge. It could hold thousands of beings when needed. Today it felt full even though only the ambassadors were there. Jake found his seat at the human table. It was the same seat he had used for 12 years. The same view of the great window that showed the stars beyond. But today even the stars looked cold. Chancellor Vexhai of the Korthani Empire stood up first. His body was made of living crystal that changed colors when he was upset. Right now he was bright red with anger. "We are here today to discuss a problem that threatens us all," he said. His voice sounded like breaking glass. "The humans have become too strong, too dangerous." Jake did not move. He had expected this day for months. Captain Lisa Rodriguez had warned him from her ship at the edge of human space. She commanded the defense fleet that protected the outer worlds from pirates and raiders. "They are scared of us," she had told him during their last private talk. "Fear makes people do stupid things." Ambassador Quirrell from the Hegemony Worlds spoke next. Her 6 arms moved as she talked the way her people always did when they were nervous. "Human ships patrol areas we never asked them to patrol. Human scientists make discoveries that change the balance of power. Human soldiers train our young people in ways of war we do not understand. More voices joined in. The Draconian representative complained about human mining operations. The Vorthon delegate worried about human research into weapons technology. One by one, they listed their fears like children telling scary stories in the dark. Jake listened to it all. He thought about the human colonies spread across the galaxy. Millions of people who had left Earth to build new lives among the stars. Farmers on New Terra who grew food that fed 3 alien worlds. Doctors on research stations who had cured diseases that had killed aliens for centuries. Engineers who built the hyperspace gates that let everyone travel between star systems in days instead of years. The accusations went on for hours. Jake noticed that nobody talked about the good things humans had done. Nobody mentioned the trade, routes that human ships kept safe. Nobody talked about the early warning systems that human scientists had built to watch for dangers from deep space. Nobody remembered the wars that human soldiers had helped to end. Finally, Chancellor HFY called for the vote. All those in favor of removing humanity from the Galactic Council? The votes came in one by one. The Korthani voted yes. The Hegemony voted yes. The Draconians voted yes. Species after species voted to throw humanity out of the club they had helped to build. Only Ambassador Trill of the Vorthon Collective voted no. She was old even by alien standards, and her voice shook when she spoke. "This is a mistake," she said. "The humans are our friends. They have helped us more than they have hurt us. We will regret this choice." But her voice was lost in the chorus of agreement. 46 votes for removal. 1 vote against. Jake Morrison stood up slowly. The chamber became quiet. Even the air recycling system seemed to stop humming. "Very well," Jake said. His voice was calm and steady. "Humanity accepts your decision. We will leave all Council territories within 30 days. We will remove our ships, our people, our stations, and our technology. Everything we have built here, we will take with us." He walked toward the door but stopped before leaving. "But I want you all to remember this day. Remember that when fear came to this chamber, you chose to listen to it instead of to reason. Remember that when trouble comes knocking at your door, the people you are throwing out today would have stood beside you to fight it off." The door closed behind him with a soft whisper. In the chamber, the alien ambassadors sat in their seats and tried to convince themselves they had done the right thing. Outside, Jake Morrison smiled for the first time in weeks. The first part of humanity's plan was complete. He activated his communication device and sent a message to every human world, every human ship, every human station in the galaxy. The message was simple. Come home. It is time to show them what they are losing. Within hours, the greatest movement in galactic history began. Humans started packing up their lives, their dreams, their futures. They loaded everything they could carry onto ships and began the long journey to the edge of known space. Behind them, they left empty buildings and abandoned factories. They left allies who would soon learn what it meant to stand alone. The galaxy had voted. Now it would live with the choice it had made. The humans were going home, but they were not going home to hide. They were going home to prepare for the day when the galaxy would need them again. And when that day came, the price of human help would be much higher than it had ever been before. Jake Morrison looked out at the stars one last time from the council building. Somewhere out there, his people were already moving. Soon the galaxy would be a very different place. Soon everyone would understand what it meant when humans walked away. 6 months had passed since the last human ship disappeared beyond the galactic rim. The silence from human space was complete. No trade ships, no research data, no friendly voices on the communication channels. It was as if humanity had never existed at all. The first major crisis came when the Draconian Syndicate decided to test the new order. Their fleet of warships crossed into the Centauri sector, a region rich in rare minerals that had been under joint alien protection for 50 years. Without human patrol ships watching the borders, the Draconians thought they could take whatever they wanted. Commander Rex Holt led the combined alien defense fleet that tried to stop them. His ships were good, but they had always depended on human intelligence networks to know where the enemy was and what they were planning. Now they were flying blind into battle. Enemy contacts at bearing 27 Mark IV, his sensor officer reported. I count 15 heavy cruisers and twice as many fighters. Rex felt his stomach drop. The human early warning systems would have detected this force days ago, giving the defenders time to prepare and call for reinforcements. Now they were facing a surprise attack with no advance notice. The battle was short and brutal. The Draconian ships used tactics that human intelligence officers had been tracking for years. But without access to that intelligence, Rex's fleet walked straight into every trap. 3 alien ships were destroyed and 5 more badly damaged. Before Rex ordered a retreat, the Draconians claimed victory and began strip mining operations in the Centauri sector. Other aggressive species watched and learned. If the galaxy's defense forces were this weak, maybe it was time to settle old grudges and grab new territory. On Cathara Station, the situation was getting desperate. The Draconian scientists who had replaced Dr. Nina Gray were smart and dedicated, but the station's systems were failing faster than they could fix them. The atmospheric processors were running at 60% efficiency. The main computer core was showing critical errors every day. Dr. Zekthor was the lead scientist now. He had 3 advanced degrees and 20 years of research experience, but human technology was like a foreign language that he only half understood. Try rerouting power through the secondary grid, he told his team as alarms beeped in the background. The power rerouting worked for 2 hours before causing a cascade failure that knocked out life support to 3 entire sections of the station. Emergency teams worked around the clock to restore basic functions, while Zekthor sent increasingly desperate messages to anyone who might have human technical manuals. No one answered. The humans were gone, and they had taken their knowledge with them. Trade was collapsing across the galaxy. The merchant ship Star of Aldebaran was not the only vessel attacked by pirates in what used to be safe space. Dozens of cargo ships had been lost in the past month alone. The trade routes that had carried goods between worlds for generations were becoming too dangerous to travel. Captain Quimal had survived the attack on his ship, but barely. He was stuck in the Rigel system, with a damaged engine and no money to pay for repairs. In the old days, he would have contacted the human merchant marine for emergency assistance. Their rescue ships would have been there within hours. Now he sent distress calls into empty space and got nothing back but silence. The economic effects spread like ripples in a pond. Worlds that depended on imported food began to run short. Manufacturing centers could not get the raw materials they needed. Advanced medical supplies became impossible to find as the human factories that made them sat empty and dark. Ambassador Trill of the Vorthon Collective watched the growing chaos with a heavy heart. She had been the only voice to vote against expelling humanity from the Council, and now she felt like a prophet of doom whose warnings had come true. We need to contact the humans, she told the emergency council session that had been called to address the growing crisis. We made a mistake, and we need to admit it. Chancellor Vexhi's crystal body flickered with angry colors. The humans are gone by their own choice. We cannot appear weak by begging them to return. Weak? Trill's old voice cracked with emotion. Look around you. Our trade routes are under attack. Our technology is failing. Our defenses are crumbling. How much weaker can we get? But the other council members were too proud to admit their mistake. They convinced themselves that the problems were temporary, that they could solve everything without human help. They sent their own ships to patrol, the trade routes and their own scientists to study the failing systems. It was not enough. It was nowhere near enough. The worst incident came when a civilian transport carrying 5,000 hegemony citizens was attacked by raiders in the Outer Rim. The ship sent desperate distress calls as pirates boarded and began looting the cargo holds. The passengers were herded into the main compartments like animals while the raiders decided what to do with them. In the old days, human fast response ships would have reached the transport within minutes. The raiders knew this, so they rarely attacked civilian vessels in human-protected space. But the humans were gone now, and the pirates were getting bolder every day. The hegemony defense fleet arrived 8 hours later. They found the transport, drifting in space with its engines dead and its communications array destroyed. Half the passengers were gone, taken as slaves to be sold on the black market. The other half were traumatized survivors who would never forget being abandoned when they needed help most. The news of the transport attack spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Civilian travel dropped by 70% almost overnight. Planets that had welcomed visitors from other worlds began closing their borders. The sense of safety and cooperation that had held galactic civilization together was dying. Deep in human space, far beyond the galactic rim, Ambassador Jake Morrison sat in his office aboard the colony ship New Horizon and read the intelligence reports. The galaxy was falling apart exactly as humanity had predicted it would. Lieutenant Commander Beth Turner brought him the daily summary of alien communications that their monitoring stations had intercepted. "They are asking for our help now," she said. "Dozens of messages every day begging us to return." Jake nodded but did not look up from his reports. "And our response?" "The same as always," Turner replied. "Humanity is no longer part of galactic affairs. We wish them success in resolving their internal matters." The automatic messages were sent by computer systems that had been programmed months ago. No human voices, no personal responses, just cold digital text that offered nothing but empty wishes for success. Captain Greg Miller commanded the scout ship Wanderer at the edge of human territory. His job was to monitor the galactic border and report on alien fleet movements, but his orders were clear. Watch only, never interfere. "Sir, we have a distress call from a Vorthan medical transport," his communications officer reported. "They are under attack by 3 raider ships. Estimated time to destruction is 15 minutes. Greg's hands tightened on his command chair. The Vorthons had been humanity's closest allies before the expulsion. Many of his crew had Vorthon friends, and some had even married into Vorthon families. "Are we in range to assist?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes, sir. We could be there in 5 minutes." Greg closed his eyes and thought about the orders from Admiral Blake. No interference, no assistance, no exceptions. "Continue monitoring," he said quietly. "Do not engage." 15 minutes later, the Vorthan transport's distress beacon went silent. Greg's crew worked at their stations with grim faces, knowing that people they cared about had just died while they watched and did nothing. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson about the difference between independence and abandonment. They had chosen to stand alone, and now they were discovering what that really meant. In the darkness between stars, predators were stirring. Ancient dangers were waking up. And the people who had protected the galaxy from these threats for generations were gone, watching from far away as civilization slowly collapsed. 2 years after humanity's departure, the long-range sensors on the edge of the galaxy detected something that made every alien civilization freeze with terror. The readings were impossible to mistake. Massive energy signatures moving in from the void beyond known space. Ships the size of moons, powered by technology that bent the laws of physics. The Devourers had returned. Emergency council sessions were called on every major world as the data spread through galactic communication networks. The name itself was whispered in fear across a dozen languages. Ancient records spoke of a nomadic species that traveled between galaxies, consuming entire star systems to fuel their journey. They had not been seen for over 3,000 years, and most species had begun to think they were just legends. Chancellor Vexhai stood before the emergency assembly on Zephyria Prime, his crystal body flickering with colors that showed his panic. "The sensor data is confirmed," he announced to the gathered representatives. "Multiple contacts, estimated mass in the millions of tons each, approaching from galactic coordinates 77 Mark 12. The chamber erupted in chaos, 46 different species all trying to talk at once, their voices mixing together in a symphony of fear and confusion. Some wanted to evacuate their homeworlds immediately. Others called for a unified military response. A few suggested trying to negotiate with the approaching threat. Ambassador Trill raised her ancient voice above the noise. "Where are the human early warning stations?" she demanded. Their deep space monitoring network would have detected this threat months ago. Silence fell over the chamber. The human sensor arrays that had watched the galactic rim for decades were gone, dismantled, or abandoned when humanity withdrew. The gaps in their detection grid had left the galaxy blind to threats from deep space. The human systems have been offline for 2 years, reported General Cax of the Hegemony Defense Force. We are working to replace them with our own technology, but the process is not complete. Trill's laugh was bitter and cold. 2 years too late. The humans built those networks to protect us from exactly this kind of threat. We threw away our shield and now the sword is coming down. The defense preparations that followed were a disaster of competing interests and conflicting technologies. Each species wanted to protect their own worlds first and contribute to the common defense second. The unified command structure that humanity had helped build over decades fell apart in weeks. Admiral Keth of the Korthani fleet found himself trying to coordinate ships that could barely talk to each other. Human communication protocols had allowed seamless integration between different alien technologies. Without those protocols, the combined fleet was like an orchestra, where half the musicians could not hear the conductor. The Draconian ships are using frequency 7.4 for tactical communications, his signals officer reported. The Vorthan vessels are on frequency 9.1. The Hegemony fleet is using encrypted channels that we cannot access. Keth wanted to scream. In the old days, human communication officers would have solved this problem in minutes. They had studied every alien technology and built bridges between systems that were never designed to work together. Now those bridges were gone, and the fleet was fragmenting before it even reached the battle zone. Meanwhile, on the colony ship, Terra Nova, far beyond the galactic rim, strategic analyst Lucy Watson tracked the approaching Devourer fleet with equipment that was generations ahead of anything the Council possessed. Her sensors could see details that the alien networks missed, and the picture they painted was terrifying. First contact with outer settlements in 18 months, she reported to General Scott Adams. Based on their current trajectory and speed, the main force will reach the core worlds within 3 years. Scott studied the holographic display that showed the enemy formation. Hundreds of massive vessels moving in perfect coordination, their energy signatures unlike anything in the galactic database. What are our projections for Council fleet effectiveness? Lucy's expression was grim. Based on their current military strength and coordination problems, I estimate 3 weeks of resistance before complete collapse, maybe less. The first skirmishes came sooner than anyone expected. Devourer scout ships, each one larger than an alien battleship, appeared in the outer systems and began systematic destruction of anything they found. Automated mining stations were torn apart for raw materials. Communication relays were crushed like insects. Entire asteroids were consumed to feed the advance fleet. The alien response was brave but futile. Squadron after squadron of their best, ships threw themselves at the scouts, achieving nothing but their own destruction. The Devourer vessels absorbed damage that should have vaporized them and kept fighting as if nothing had happened. Captain Rex Holt led his Vorthon squadron in the first major engagement near the Altair system. His ships were fast and well-armed, crewed by veterans who had fought pirates and raiders for decades. They lasted exactly 7 minutes against a single Devourer scout. All weapons concentrate fire on their primary hull, Rex ordered as his fleet closed to attack range. Energy beams and missiles poured into the enemy vessel, lighting up space with brilliant explosions. The Devourer ship absorbed every shot and responded with a weapon that turned matter into energy at the molecular level. 3 Vorthon cruisers simply ceased to exist, leaving nothing behind but expanding clouds of superheated gas. Rex ordered a retreat, but only half his ships had engines left to obey. The survivors limped back to base with horrific damage reports and news that would send terror through every military command in the galaxy. The aliens began sending messages to human space within hours of the first defeats. Desperate pleas for help flooded the communication channels that had been silent for 2 years. Military codes, diplomatic frequencies, even civilian emergency bands carried the same message over and over. Please help us. The responses never changed. Automated systems sent back the same polite rejection they had been programmed to deliver. Humanity is not available for consultation on galactic matters. We wish you success in your endeavors, but the messages kept coming anyway. Chancellor, Vexai himself recorded a personal appeal that was broadcast on every human frequency they could find. "We were wrong," his translated voice said through communication systems that crackled with static from nearby battles. "We made a terrible mistake. Please, we are begging you, help us." The message was received by monitoring stations throughout human space. It was recorded, analyzed, filed, and ignored. On the scout ship Wanderer, Captain Greg Miller watched alien fleets being torn apart by enemies that seemed invincible. His crew had front-row seats to the destruction of everything they had once called home. Some of them had friends fighting in those doomed battles. All of them had orders not to interfere. "Sir, the entire Hegemony 7th Fleet just went dark," reported his sensor officer. "No survivors detected." Greg nodded without expression, but inside he was screaming. 2 years of watching had taught him to control his reactions, but it never got easier. "Continue monitoring, maintain communication silence." In his private cabin that night, Greg stared at the star charts on his wall and wondered if humanity was doing the right thing. The galaxy had rejected them, thrown them out like unwanted relatives at a family gathering. But watching entire civilizations die while you had the power to help felt like the worst kind of revenge. He was not the only human having these thoughts. On ships and stations throughout the exile fleet, people were asking the same questions. Were they protecting themselves or punishing their former allies? Was this justice or just cruelty? The answers would have to wait. The Devourer fleet was accelerating toward the core worlds, and the galaxy's desperate defenders were falling back system by system. Soon there would be nothing left to save except empty space and the ghosts of civilizations that had chosen fear over friendship. And in the darkness beyond the rim, humanity watched and waited and prepared for the moment when the galaxy would finally understand the true price of walking alone in a universe full of monsters. 3 years, 4 months, and 16 days after walking away from the Galactic Council, humanity returned to a galaxy that was dying. But they did not return as the same species that had been expelled from the chambers of Zephyria Prime. The UFS Redemption dropped out of hyperspace above the ruins of what had once been the Council's greatest military stronghold. The ship was sleek and beautiful, its hull shimmering with energy fields that bent light around its edges. Behind it came a fleet of vessels that looked like they had been built by gods instead of engineers. Admiral Lisa Rodriguez stood on the bridge of her flagship and surveyed the devastation below. The orbital stations were twisted metal and debris. The planet's surface was scarred with impact craters, where Devourer weapons had torn through the crust. The space around the world was littered with the wreckage of alien ships that had died trying to defend their home. "Signal from the surface," her communications officer reported. "They are requesting immediate assistance." Lisa nodded. "Put them through." The face that appeared on the main screen was barely recognizable as Chancellor Vexai. His crystal body was cracked and dull, missing large sections where combat damage had never been properly repaired. Behind him, the emergency bunker where the surviving council members had taken shelter was dark and cold. "Human ship," Vexai whispered, his voice breaking with emotion. "Please, we need help. The Devourers have taken 80% of our worlds. Our fleets are destroyed. Our people are dying." Lisa looked at him for a long moment before responding. "We received your messages. All of them. For 2 years you begged us to come back and save you." "Yes," Vexai said quickly. "We were wrong. We made a terrible mistake. We need you." "You need us," Lisa repeated. "The same species you voted to expel because we were too dangerous. The same people you accused of threatening galactic peace. Now you need us." Behind Lisa, Captain Danny Foster and Major Chris Evans exchanged glances. They had been part of the evacuation from New Terra 3 years ago. They remembered loading their lives onto ships and abandoning the worlds they had built. They remembered the fear and anger in alien voices as humanity was cast out like criminals. "We have changed," said Ambassador Jake Morrison as he walked onto the bridge. His appearance was different now, his body enhanced with technology that made him faster and stronger than any baseline human. His eyes held knowledge that came from 3 years of preparation for this exact moment. "We know you have changed," Vexai said desperately. Your ships, your technology, it is far beyond anything we have ever seen. Please use it to help us." Jake smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. "Oh, we will help you. But not because you asked nicely. We will help because the galaxy needs to learn some important lessons." The human fleet spread out across the system like wolves surrounding wounded prey. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering that made the old human vessels look like primitive toys. During their 3 years in exile, humanity had not been idle. They had built and learned and evolved into something that would have terrified the Council even more than their original fears. Dr. Amy Collins, now Director of Human Scientific Development, began treating the wounded aliens with medical techniques that seemed like magic. Injuries that should have taken months to heal were repaired in hours. Diseases that had no cure were eliminated with a single injection. The survivors watched in amazement as human medicine worked miracles that their own doctors had declared impossible. "How did you learn to do this?" asked Dr. Zekthor, the draconian scientist who had struggled to maintain Cathara Station after the humans left. His own injuries from the Devourer attacks were healing before his eyes. Amy did not look up from her work. 3 years of having nothing to do but research and experiment. 3 years of not wasting time on politics and committees and bureaucracy. Amazing what you can accomplish when nobody is telling you to slow down. The real shock came when Admiral Kevin Blake's battle fleet arrived to face the Devourer armada. The human ships moved through space like dancers, their formations perfect, and their weapons singing with power that made reality itself bend. They had spent 3 years preparing for this fight, studying every scrap of data about the ancient enemy. The first engagement lasted exactly 72 hours. The Devourers, creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia, found themselves facing an opponent that had evolved specifically to destroy them. Human weapons tore through their defenses like paper. Human shields absorbed their most powerful attacks without even flickering. But the most devastating human weapon was not energy beams or missiles. It was tactics. The humans fought with a coordination and intelligence that the Devourers had never encountered. Every move was calculated. Every attack was part of a larger plan. The ancient enemy found itself being systematically dismantled by an opponent that seemed to predict their every action. When the smoke cleared and the last Devourer ship was reduced to cosmic dust, the galaxy sat in stunned silence. The threat that had destroyed countless civilizations had been eliminated in less than 4 days, by a species that most aliens had considered only moderately advanced. Jake Morrison walked into the ruins of the council chamber on Zephyria Prime and looked at the handful of surviving alien leaders. They sat in their broken chairs and stared at him with expressions of fear and wonder, and desperate hope. "Humanity will not be rejoining your council," he announced, his voice echoing in the damaged chamber. "We have learned to appreciate our independence. We have discovered what we can accomplish when we are not held back by committees and compromise and the fears of others." Chancellor Vexahai tried to speak, but Jake held up a hand for silence. "However," Jake continued, "we are not without mercy. We will establish protectorates over those worlds that request our aid. We will rebuild your defenses and restore your trade routes. We will even share some of our new technology with you." The aliens looked at each other with confusion and hope. This sounded too good to be true. "The terms are simple," Jake said. "We provide protection and assistance. You provide respect and recognition of human authority in all matters relating to galactic security. You will not question our methods or our decisions. You will not form alliances against us or attempt to limit our activities. You will remember that you chose to be alone, and we chose to let you learn from that choice." Ambassador Trill, the one alien who had voted against humanity's expulsion, raised her trembling hand. "What if we refuse these terms?" Jake's smile was cold and final. "Then you continue to stand alone. The Devourers are gone, but there are other threats in the dark between stars. Pirates and raiders who have grown bold in the absence of proper patrol fleets, ancient weapons that still wait in forgotten ruins, strange things that move in the deep void and hunger for the warmth of living worlds." He turned and began walking toward the exit. "The choice is yours, just as it was 3 years ago. But this time think carefully about the consequences before you decide." As Jake left the chamber, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The surviving aliens finally understood the lesson that humanity had taught them. When humans walked away, they did not just leave. They evolved. They grew stronger and smarter and more dangerous. The galaxy had expelled humanity in fear of what they might become. When they returned, that fear was revealed to be a pale shadow of the truth. Humanity had indeed become something to fear, but they had become something to fear for their enemies, not their friends. The age of human dominance began not through conquest, but through the simple act of walking away and letting the galaxy learn what it meant to be alone in the dark. Now the survivors would spend generations trying to earn back the friendship they had thrown away in a moment of fear and prejudice. And in the depths of space, where new threats were always stirring, humanity watched and waited and protected. A galaxy that finally understood the difference between strength and aggression, between guardianship and tyranny. The humans had walked away once. They would not need to do it again.